Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tech, Mary Kill. We have a really exciting episode. But first, congratulations to Aya, whose book is on the top 5 of the Spiegel bestseller list.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy. Thank you guys for all of your support. I hope one day it's going to be published in English. If you have any contacts, let me know. I'm really, really happy. Thanks.
Well done, Aya. The book is called Broligarchy. Will be in English soon. But congrats on the German success.
Thank you. Yes, I'll put a link in my bio. You can check it out whenever you want.
We have lots of good stuff to talk about today. The ULM5 Palestinian activists lawsuit and court case. Aya's done some great interviews with the lawyer involved that can tell us a little bit about what's happening with that. SpaceX IPO. I'm forgetting something. There's another news item we have.
Yeah, we would also like to talk to you about the Pope, who would like to regulate AI, it seems, with a little help from an AI company, which is weird in itself. So if you want to start, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so SpaceX. Yeah, this might be the largest IPO in history. And I feel like I need to talk about it more because I don't feel like the numbers add up. So here's what's happening. SpaceX is currently the most valuable private company on Earth. It was founded in March 2002. That's 24 years ago. And now Elon Musk wants to take it public in what would be the largest IPO in history. So we're talking $75 billion raised on a valuation of at least $1.8 trillion. Now, I think these numbers don't really add up, and I'm going to tell you why. If you want to put this valuation into perspective, the entire annual economic output of Australia is about $1.7 trillion. So we're being asked to believe that one company, which made less than 20 billion in revenue last year and grew at 15% in Q1 of this year, is worth more than Australia. Now, I highly doubt that. How do you justify a 1.8 trillion valuation on less than $20 billion in revenue? It's simple. You just charge 100 times the revenue. So even for the most profitable, fast-growing tech companies, your Anthropics, your OpenAIs, the ones actually making money, the wildest bubble valuations top out at about 30 times revenue, and Musk wants to charge you over 100 times for a company that is neither profitable nor growing fast. Yeah, they have 3 actual business segments. They're not equally bad, but let's get into the first one, right? So SpaceX controls about 80% of all mass launched. How do I say of all mass launched rockets into orbit? Reusable rockets, basically. So that's a big deal. But the market for reusable rockets right now is relatively small, as you can imagine. So most of what they're launching is their own Starlink satellites, and revenues of those actually dropped 28% in Q1 this year. The space division is basically subsidizing the rest of the company, and they're losing more money than it makes. They have a second segment, Starlink, the satellite internet service, that is that's doing quite well. 11 billion in revenue last year. They had 50% growth. They had real operating margins. Now, you could justify 3 to 400 billion in valuation there. Maybe that's being an optimistic guess, but I feel like that one is more easy to grasp because here you have at least real cash flows. But with the third segment, the artificial intelligence one, this is where I feel like we're entering a different phase because you can't do an IPO in 2026. You don't see any companies not slapping on AI on basically everything that they do. You could say, yeah, there could be a lot of money made there. Maybe some people would say this is how he justifies this whole thing. But the small problem here is that Musk's AI company, XAI, and his chatbot Grok, they're not exactly outperforming OpenAI at the moment, or Anthropic, or any other AI company that I know of. Anthropic grew by a factor of 10. XAI only grew about 12.5%. Grok, they don't have any really paying customers, really. The entire AI division brought in $880 million in Q1, and most of that isn't even AI revenue itself. That is X.com, formerly known as Twitter, and that one has lost two-thirds of its revenue since Musk took over. So I'm like, how does Musk really justify this huge sum? I have a quote with me today where he says, "It's important to consider for the competitiveness of any technology company, what matters is not the position at any point in time, but what is your velocity and acceleration. And if you're moving faster than anyone else in any given technology arena, you will be the leader. And XAI is moving faster than any other company. No one is even close." Now, I want to gently note that XAI grew at 12.5% last year, while losing $3 for every dollar it earns. I don't know. I wouldn't call this velocity. I don't know if I had to make a prediction on what will probably happen once the IPO starts is probably the stock price will almost certainly go up. Not because I think it's justified, but because I think that only 5% of the company is actually being offered. That's an artificially tiny supply. And retail investors, Musk's enormous fandom base, they will buy that thing up. And there have been recent changes to index rules. Means that ETFs, including the ones managing a lot of people's pension savings, they will be forced to buy SpaceX shares whether they like the valuation or not. So the price will most certainly go up almost by design. And someone will get very, very rich. What do you think of this, Jess?
Yeah, it's been a few crazy moves by Elon. I mean, the fact that the NASDAQ itself has changed the seasoning period is ridiculous. So let me back up. Elon has a history of just like fudging the rules and norms of business so that he gets more money and more investment, sometimes through explicitly lying. Like when he got the initial investment from the US government, he said that he had a functioning plan for an electric car, and he did not. Then he got the investment from the government. He told private investors that he already had secured the government loans, that they would come in with money. Now, the impact on the economy is that Ford or some other auto retailer could have had a much better workable model for an electric car that could go to market faster or have better mileage or whatever. And so now our consumer products are worse because of his, corruption and manipulation and lying. And what's going on with the SpaceX IPO is like this initial public offering where they're saying instead of just private investors, anyone can invest in this. Typically, what happens is there's like a seasoning period where they assess how the stock performs before putting it in an index fund. Now, an index fund could be like, we're going to bunch together a few companies to diversify your portfolio. So instead of you going in and being an active investor and saying, okay, I have to retire one day, I'm going to invest in Walmart and Amazon and Apple and SpaceX and all of these different stocks together to build a fund, a portfolio of diversity. These index funds compile them for you. And typically, when you're investing in your retirement through work, it is someone else that's determining what your pension fund is invested in, what index funds they're buying. And that means a lot of Americans will be invested in SpaceX even if they don't want to. The other weird part about this, so that seasoning period, that's usually like a year before they say, okay, we pretty much know what the value is. The market's regulated itself. This seems like a stable and safe investment, a smart investment. That period would take like a year. Now it's 15 days. And that change happened this spring. So it's really suspicious that it's happening right before SpaceX's IPO. He also, these mergers, absorbing X into XAI, and then XAI, after it burned through like $1 billion in a few months, to then say, okay, we're going to use SpaceX to buy that company. He's really robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that it does not bode well. And so I think that's why he's taken this approach of also saying, instead of doing what companies typically do, which is to have about 90% of their stock go to institutional investors like banks and insurance companies and these funds. Instead, he's saying that should be 70% and 30% should be public. So he's artificially reducing the supply to make it seem like there's an increased demand for the stock so that there is a spike initially. The existing investors in SpaceX can pull out after 180 days, whereas a lot of these pensioners are not going to pull out until they retire. So they're stuck with the stock that everyone with money in SpaceX right now might do very well. I think Elon's under a different structure of rules. I don't think he's in the group that can pull out after 180 days. I think he would have to wait longer. But all of the people invested in SpaceX can make a killing and then get out before the stock regulates because, like you said, the revenue multiplier here, I saw an estimate of 50 times what revenue is. Facebook's, by contrast, was 11 at the time of their IPO. So this is just egregious how he's trying to just make a bunch of money by making SpaceX go public. It's a literal scam, and I think there's going to be people that did what they did during Doge and invest because they think Elon's some kind of genius and their boy, and maybe they did make money off of Dogecoin or whatever. And so he's also manipulating the public who overwhelmingly doesn't have money to spare or invest for retail investments, like just buying this because they love Elon.
I do see a lot of posts from people that really think that he's a genius for doing this, and I just fear for their money. But yeah, I don't know what to say at this point. I think the stock price, as we said, it's gonna go up by design, and we're gonna see some people getting really, really rich off of this. Yeah, let's talk about our second news, because equally big was Pope Leo the 14th. He made a huge statement last week. Pope Leo is the first American pope who got elected roughly a year ago. He published his first major encyclical. It's called Magnifica Humanitas, which translates to Magnificent Humanity, and it's 42,000 words on the dangers and promises of AI. I haven't read those 42,000 words. I have to be really, really honest. But I have some quotes with me, and I have some people commenting on what he has said. So for all I know is it calls for regulation. It urges governments and companies to slow down, and it frames AI as one of the defining moral tests of our era. I think all of it sounded great when I read the headlines, and I was like, finally, somebody's pushing back. Somebody's saying that, yeah, we should slow down with all of this. When I saw the co-founder of Anthropic, Christopher Ola, who was like in the assembly hall, in the main assembly hall, seated alongside those cardinals and theologians, I was thinking to myself, one of the most valuable AI companies, a company currently in conflict with the Trump administration because it reportedly refused to let its AI be used for autonomous lethal targeting without human oversight. We have had an episode on this already. And also, like, Anthropic just filed for its IPO. That is also worth billions. I'm like, that's a strange look. And I think Timnit Gebru, I wrote a statement from her on LinkedIn. She's one of the most respected AI ethics researchers out there. She got fired from Google a few years ago for publishing research they didn't like. She put it this way on LinkedIn. She said that the Vatican could have told Anthropic to stop data theft, labor exploitation, environmental destruction, or just like stop lying about product capabilities. But instead, the Pope gave them a platform, and she called it Vatican washing. I also like that she shared an analysis from another researcher called Lorena Jean Palassi, which framed the whole thing as a quote, masterclass in soft power repositioning. She said Anthropic is embedding itself in the Vatican's moral architecture at the precise moment it's under fire from Washington. It's building legitimacy with European regulators and publics and entering one of the continent's most symbolically significant markets. And I have to say, I agree with those statements. And I would say that the encyclica is quite calm. I would even call it moderate. It doesn't say stop. It says basically like, AI is coming. This is happening. Let's make sure it happens responsibly. And I get why, but I also think that the framing does something very, very specific. It treats AI as something that's inevitable. And I think we have seen a lot of people saying that we don't need to buy into this whole shtick of this being inevitable and this is going to come our way. This is some propaganda that's being pushed down our throats from those AI companies. Could we not instead be in an age of resistance to it? That's what I actually hoped to hear from the Pope. What do you think?
I love the Pope. I love our Chicago Pope who wears Nike sneakers. I think he's the best. I had a dream the other day that the Pope did Jubilee. Do you know Jubilee, where
Yeah.
someone sits in a chair and debates everyone? It was the Pope, and he smoked everybody. And I woke up and I was like, what does this dream mean? Why did this happen to me? So I agree that the human brain is magnificent and better than anything AI can invent. I don't even want to see AI try to invent the Pope doing Jubilee. I've got it, okay? But here's my theory. So obviously AI should serve humanity. Thank you to the Pope for using your platform to discuss this. Um, Peter Thiel, he believes that there isn't going to be an Antichrist out there who believes in a global agenda and who works against human progress, which we know he sees as AI taking over and shit like that. So what if not the theologians, the Peter Thiel weird religious sect, their Antichrist, what if their Antichrist is the Pope? That would be really fun. Okay.
I'm going to call this episode, What If the Antichrist is the Pope?
Yes, please. We really should. Yeah, I don't know. As a culturally Catholic person, I've always looked to the Pope. I'm agnostic, maybe, with spiritual Buddhist sympathies. But my grandma growing up had a photo of the Pope on the fridge. And her husband died when my dad was young. And so we would ask, who is this guy? And she would just say, that's my boyfriend. And we said, okay, we're kids, we don't know. And then one day the Pope was on TV. And we said to my dad, we were like, Grandma's boyfriend's on TV. Look, it's Grandma's boyfriend. And he was like, what are you talking about? And so, love the Pope. That's my grandfather. And my Italian brain rot is real. It should not be controversial at all that people who are Catholic are now saying oh, the Pope's woke. We disown the Pope. The Pope is supposed to be the voice of God and Jesus for Catholics, so it's crazy that it's not. But anyway, I don't need AI for my Italian brain rot anymore because I have it within my own family.
I love that. The Pope is your grandma's boyfriend, and
that's my grandpa.
Oh, yeah. Jess, do you actually consider the Pope's opinion on AI?
Yes, because that's my grandfather, and I will take everything he says really seriously. No, in all honesty, I think this is someone who spends all day thinking about what makes a good person, what makes a good soul, what is best for humanity, right? And so if there's anyone who is someone I would listen to on the question of AI, yeah, it's the Pope for sure. I would listen to any spiritual leader, wherever you come from, on AI, because anyone who spends all day thinking carefully about these questions is worth listening to.
I love that. I believe it was a good thing to hear from the Pope that we need to slow down anything with connected to AI. With that said, I would like to introduce our main topic of today. This is one I've been following a bit more closely and I want to take some more time on it. So the ULM5, you already said it in the intro. It's basically 5 activists that have entered the German offices of Elbit Systems, which is in Ulm, which is a city in Germany, last year, September. They broke in, they entered. For anybody not knowing what Elbit Systems is, Elbit Systems is Israel's largest private arms manufacturer. So they produce surveillance drones, weapon systems, military technology. And these 5 people, they documented themselves damaging equipment, spray painting, chanting slogans. They caused roughly 1 million euros in damage. And then they were arrested. They did not run. They did not try to flee from the police. They basically waited until the police arrived. Now, ever since, they have been in pre-trial detention since that night, and that's now been over 8 months. The legally permitted pre-trial detention limit in Germany is 6 months. So their trial now began on April 27th, 2026, at a very specific location, the Stammheim prison complex that's outside of Stuttgart. Stammheim is the high security facility where the state tried the core members of the Red Army faction in the 1970s. The building became a symbol of state power, asserting itself against those it defined existential threats. Now, putting those 5 people, they're rather young people, who broke windows in a weapons factory on trial there, I don't feel like that's a neutral logistical choice. It is very much a statement because they have already found out that there would have been other rooms they could be debating all of this in, but they have specifically wanted to do this at the Stammheim facility center. So I was at one of those recent hearings in Stuttgart, the one where the defendants were given the chance to speak to their own motivations for the very first time. And I also spoke to one of the defense lawyers, Benjamin, afterwards. I want to tell you first what was said and what I heard in the room. So there were activists, around 30, 40 maybe activists. The rest, 20 other journalists were in the room. So this was not a very big room. We were not allowed to applaud or be loud in any type of way. The judge even said that she felt like it was disturbing to even see our hands doing this motion, because she was like, well, this is so distracting. Please stop doing that. And this was the way of a lot of activists to show their support to the people saying their statements and showing that they're behind them and like they're supporting whatever they're saying. So these activists were not allowed to, I don't know, to say anything. It was just super, super weird because outside of the court, there was also like a bigger tent where other activists were like really loudly protesting and talking about the court case to other people driving by, walking by, and giving interviews. And you could see that they had to really control themselves. And what I also saw is that I was told that I'm not allowed to bring in any laptop or any phone. I even got, how do you say, strip searched. I had to take off my shoes before entering the court, because they wanted to make sure that I don't have any recording device with me. So a lot of the notes that I have, I put it right into like a, what do you call it? We call it sometimes brain dump, where you just write down everything that you remember right then and there. There were a couple of journalists that had an ID with them that officially said that they are a journalist, who were allowed to take in maybe a very small laptop, or they were able to like take notes. So the whole thing was going on for the whole day, basically. I was there in the morning at 9 a.m. and it went on until 6 or 7. I basically could not go outside the courthouse, or I would lose this seat that I had. So I was really thirsty. I could not check my phone. I could not check any notes. I could not Google anything that they said. I don't know. Like this was the atmosphere that we were in. And some of these people that were on trial, they had statements going for over 45 minutes sometimes. Not all of them were this long, but like sometimes they went on to they went into depth to explain why they did what they did. Some of them explained colonialism and how Germany was basically wrapped up, historically speaking, in colonial actions. Some of them were describing Albert systems. And I would just like to take a moment to read some of those quotes so you know, in their own words, how they were trying to defend themselves. So, Daniel, one of the defendants, said this: "By damaging the arms production facilities of Elbit Systems in Ulm, the aim was to stop, to the greatest extent possible, the material support for the crimes being committed in Gaza. For such support constitutes complicity in genocide. I acted in the hope that I might at least succeed in disrupting the continued supply of arms to the Israeli armed forces. Furthermore, I acted with the intention of publicly exposing the scandalous fact that the German government, along with arms manufacturers based in Germany, are actively supporting and profiting from the war against Gaza." Or there was another defendant, V, that said, "What else could I do to stop this terrible, terrible bloodbath, this horror, this crime against humanity? I had no choice but to use my own hands to prevent the construction of yet another drone." And then she described what it's actually like in Gaza to live under drone surveillance. She said, "Just imagine, the moment you wake up, you hear the noise of the drones. It is the noise of the drones that keeps you awake at night. Whilst you are cooking, sleeping, working, celebrating weddings, or mourning the loss of your loved ones at funerals, you always hear the noise of the drones. Those drones that monitor you and can destroy your home or kill a loved one at any moment. This is nothing short of torture. The vast majority of these drones are produced by Elbit Systems." That was the moment I looked around and I saw a lot of activists having like tears in their eyes. And some of these defendants, and I'm not going to get into detail here, but they have also described how they have seen people getting surgeries or being operated on without anesthesia, or losing limbs, kids losing organs, their eyesight and whatnot. And these were very in-depth, like in detail descriptions of what had happened. And I could see that the judge was listening, not very empathetic to some of these, how do you call it? Like some of these requests that were made by the lawyers. So one of those things was that they had a video with them, for example, that they wanted to show that day. And there was this conversation, this back and forth conversations between one lawyer and the other. They were basically saying, "You don't need to show us the video." These were very detailed descriptions of what has happened already. And then the other lawyer was like, "Well, you don't know what the video is going to show, so how can you say that you don't want to see the video? Obviously, there must be something new to it." And then the lawyer would say, "Well, no, we don't need to see it, because anything you want to say, you can just say in a written statement or like read out loud." And then there was like this back and forth, and the judge in the very end said, "Okay, no, don't show the video." Where I have to ask myself, like, I don't know, why did we not get to see that video that they wanted to show? There were a lot of those requests that got denied. So much time was being consumed by just like procedural disputes, by rejected motions. The Stuttgart court, they have scheduled more than a dozen hearing days through the end of July, and 12 plus days in a high security facility for a case that's involving property damage and trespassing. There's a ruling from an administrative court suggesting a sentence of over 2 years is likely, and the prosecution is treating this not just as vandalism, but as membership in a criminal organization with the aim of opposing Israel's, quote, alleged genocide. It was just super interesting to see and to hear, and I was very moved that day.
Were there any sort of pro-Israel people there?
Not I I mean, there were people that did not wear any kufiya or did not talk to anybody, but I truly wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we have something similar in the United States that's been a problem, right? Because in the US, we experience so much state violence that's held to a different standard than when a citizen does something. The state can beat people, police can kill people, but the moment that a citizen, in retaliation as a part of a protest, destroys any piece of property harming no one, they're treated like an absolute criminal. RICO charges have been brought about against activists time and again that sort of treats them like a criminal organization. Greenpeace this past fall, some of their activists, it goes back to the Dakota Access Pipeline, destroyed or damaged some part of corporate infrastructure. And the initial settlement that they were demanded to pay by the court was over $600 million, which is just unthinkable. And so what do you do in a situation where there's an active warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, and we know he's committing a genocide and these weapons will go to him, and the one thing you can do is maybe try to get the company that manufactures them to not give them to him? At what point is it absurd that Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't been arrested, but these activists have been detained for over 6 months? Like, where is justice? And so I always say justice and the law are absolutely not the same. And that couldn't be more true here. The people profiting off of and facilitating this genocide are enjoying really comfortable lives, while the people that have risked everything and lost their lives trying to stop it are being met with criminal charges. And yeah, it's a really bleak thing. And to spend hours in a courtroom just thinking about that from 9 to 6, I think you're a journalist after that, Aya. I don't know.
What really left a big impression on me was what the lawyer said. Basically, Benjamin, one of the 5 lawyers present at the court, is the German state making a decision about where the line is. The line that they're trying to draw is breaking a window at a weapons factory that supplies arms to a conflict where over 50, 60, 70,000 people have been killed. That gets you 8 months of pre-trial detention in Germany's most symbolically loaded, high-security prison on charges that carry up to 5 years. But the weapons keep shipping. And I think this case matters beyond what the 5 people in that courtroom did that day. I think what's being decided in Stammheim is not just whether property damage at an arms factory is a crime. Legally, it clearly is. But what's being decided here is whether the political motivation that they have described in their statements and the context in which arms are produced, if those things can be raised as part of a defense at all. Whether the question of what was being manufactured and for what purpose is even allowed in that room. So the prosecution argues that opposing Israel's alleged genocide, their words, not mine, is the goal of a criminal organization. And that framing seems to hold up in German court. And it might set a precedent that extends far beyond direct action. It might define our limit of what political reasoning is permissible in a legal defense. I don't have any hopes, to be honest, that it's going to be a fair trial. And given how often German courts are cited as reference points across Europe, I think this definition might travel a long way.
Yeah, I think so many states, like nations, try to make it so that there is no room for anyone in a court of law to make the case that they are acting in self-defense of like an oppressive system. So it may be if someone had a house and someone damaged that house, they say, "You know what? It doesn't really matter why they did this. All that matters and all that a jury should take into consideration is, was the property damaged and was it damaged beyond a reasonable doubt by this defendant?" When you get into the territory of, well, if the US economy, if the state makes it impossible for people to have food and housing, that's an act of violence to put you in a place where you cannot survive. What can
Mhm.
people do to retaliate if their voice isn't heard by other means of protest and they decide to damage property? Um, these kinds of arguments for collective self defense or self defense against an oppressive system, our courts of law have made no room for them intentionally. And that's sort of the violence of the state, isn't it? That we can't consider it that way, but a person has self-defense against another individual as an excuse for attacking them in any way. And yeah, it is that deep. And it's
Yeah.
international. It's not just like them and the German government.
Yeah.
It's the German government selling this to another country that's doing this. And of course the Germans have such a complicated history that leads them to be supportive of Israel, right? And
Mm.
so that, of course, is at play, and it makes it a sensitive thing. But I would like for them to consider the context here, but just the fact that they're not allowing any evidence of the motivating factors, yeah, it's bleak, and the fact that the lawyers are laughing, it's an indoctrination and a loss of humanity that, they hear a story about someone having surgery with no anesthesia, and instead of being devastated, they're laughing. And in a sense, that's the cruelty of the system as well, that people are able to live without that moral sense of humanity and feelings for other people. What kind of a life is that? Not a meaningful one. So, yeah, it's just such a crazy situation. And the fact that all of this is facilitated by the tech companies that create the weapons and the AI that decides where the targets go and how they get there.
Exactly. You said it. Lack of humanity at this point, lack of empathy, lack of so many things. That was pointed out in the statements. If you are interested in the ULM5 trial, they have a website where all of their personal statements can be read online. So if you want to keep following, this continues through the summer, as I said. I will link everything in the show notes. What's your what's your tech today, Jess?
Ooh. um, maybe it's Italian brain rot. My tech is Italian brain rot. Um, I love it. It's great for a short period of time, and then I feel guilty about the water it uses, and then I say, "Stop doing this." My Mary is that's a tough one too, the Pope. I'm gonna marry the Pope, and everyone who believes
It's
that
your
AI should
grandma. I hope your grandma marries the Pope.
That's shit. Sorry, girl. Oh god. No, but hers was, the older Pope John or something? John Paul? Is that a name of a pope? Sounds right.
I don't know anything
Not this one.
about
No, I'm not
Christianity.
gonna marry the Pope. He doesn't take a wife, does he? Take a wife? What year is it, Jessica? Jesus. Okay, so the Pope doesn't have a wife, doesn't marry anyone. In a mutually consensual anyway, I'm gonna marry everyone for real. I'm
Wow,
gonna marry
this escalated.
I'm marrying everyone who believes AI should only be used to serve humanity. And my kill is Elbit. Elbit and the judge and the prosecutor for the ULM5 trial. We got through
Okay,
that. That was hard for me.
that was really hard. Um, I think my Mary is 100% those lawyers in the room. It was so nice to see them speak their truth, no matter how the faces on the other side looked, how disrespectful they were. And my kill is, I think it's the injustice in the room that was so loud that day. It was just it was just unbearable. They kept asking, why are you doing this? Why are they having these shackles on? Why are you treating them like they're super hard criminals having killed people? What's the tech? I think the tech might be I will go with Italian brain rot because my timeline is also full of that, and I kinda love it. I'm watching those. I don't know, I have fruit videos. It's not really the Italian brain rot version, but the fruit videos keep haunting me, and I watch every version of it. That's the tech.
I told my dad about Italian brain rot the other day, and he went into work and he was saying like ballerina cappuccina, and his coworkers were cracking up. They were like, "How do you know what that is?" And I was like, "Okay, next time you're around them, because they're like younger than him." I was like, "You have to be like, see, I'm not chopped unk. I know Italian brain rot." And he goes, "Chopped unk." I said, "You could just say, I'm not chopped. I'm not unk." He goes, "Yeah, I don't think I would say chopped unk. It just doesn't roll off the tongue." I was like, "Okay,
Well, recently you have also taught me some new words, like I really thought it meant uncle, but it means what does it
uncool."
mean? Uncool, yeah. Thank you for, making him wiser, making him look cooler in front of his friends,
Building bridges
and
between generations, really.
yeah, that's what we're also
Yeah.
doing with this podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will see you hopefully, probably next week. We have some exciting topics lined up. And as always, we will be on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere else. Just Google us. Like and follow. Peace out. I don't know what you're doing there.
I'm
Yeah.
doing corresponding TikTok hand
Okay.
gestures.
Thank you for your service. This is a video podcast, by the way, if you didn't know.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's fine. Okay.
Thank you to our one visual viewer. Okay, bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye.